My sister drained me for $50K on her wedding, kept asking for money for years, until I said no, and she sued me, claiming I promised to support her for life. I'm 30 years old, work in finance, and I basically just cut off contact with my entire family after my younger sister financially drained me for years and then sued me, which still sounds so absurd when I say it out loud that I almost laugh. But the truth is, there's nothing funny about it. I mean, we're talking about $50,000 I spent just on her wedding, and that was barely the beginning of this whole mess. I guess I should start from the beginning, so it makes sense how we got to this ridiculously insane point. Rachel is 26 now. She's 4 years younger than me, and since we were kids, she was always the golden child of the family, you know. That classic dynamic where one of the kids can do whatever and the parents always find a way to justify it. I was the responsible one, the one who got good grades, the one who got a good job after college, the one who paid his own bills. And Rachel was the one who spent money she didn't have and expected someone else to solve her problems, and that someone else always ended up being me. Although at the time I didn't realize how messed up everything was because, well, she's my sister, and that's supposedly how family works, right? Things started getting really crazy like 3 years ago when Rachel met Nathan. Nathan is basically a guy who jumps from job to job, never lasts more than 6 months anywhere, and always has some excuse for why he got fired or why he quit, like his boss was an idiot or the work environment was toxic or whatever. Rachel was super in love, and honestly, I thought maybe he would make her mature a little, you know? Like I thought when she had a serious relationship, she'd start taking life more seriously. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen at all. They got engaged after like a year and a half of dating, and that's when my mom called me. I remember that call perfectly because I was at my apartment. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was watching a game when the phone rang. My mom started with that voice she uses when she wants to ask me for something, you know, that super sweet and slightly nervous voice, and she says, "James, honey, I need to talk to you about something important." And I already knew something was coming, because my mom only uses my full name when she needs something. She told me Rachel and Nathan wanted to have a big wedding, that it was Rachel's dream since she was a little girl to have a princess wedding, and that they didn't have money to help them much because my dad had just changed jobs and they were tight with the house mortgage. And then came the question. "A little," she said, as if it was really going to be a little. I asked her how much was a little, and she said maybe $5,000 or $10,000 to help with the venue or the food, and that Rachel would be super grateful. Look, I made good money. I had savings because I'm one of those people who's always been careful with money. So I thought, well, she's my sister, it's her wedding, I can make this sacrifice. I told her yes, that they could count on me, and my mom got super emotional and told me I was the best brother in the world and all that stuff. What I didn't know at that moment was that those 5 or 10,000 were going to turn into 50,000 before it was all over. First was the venue. Rachel found this super fancy place on the outskirts of the city, like a mansion with giant gardens and fountains and the whole thing, and it cost $15,000 just to rent the space. When she told me the price, I almost had a heart attack, but she started with how it was the perfect place, that she dreamed of getting married there since she saw it on Instagram. And please help her, because Nathan didn't have any money, and my parents could only put in $2,000. I ended up paying the full $15,000 because it turned out my parents didn't even have those $2,000. They promised. Then came the food. Catering for 200 people, because Rachel invited half the world, cost another $12,000. And the dress, which cost $8,000 for a dress she was going to wear once. But according to Rachel, it was her dream dress, and she couldn't get married in something cheaper because she'd look horrible in the photos. And then the professional photographer, $4,000. And the band, because Rachel didn't want a DJ but a live band, another $5,000. And the flowers, and the decorations, and the cake, and the invitations, and basically everything you can imagine that costs money at a wedding. Every time I thought I was done paying for things, Rachel would come with something new. And I was an idiot, honestly, because I kept saying yes to everything. My mom would call me and tell me Rachel was super stressed planning the wedding, that I was the only one who could help her, that she would never forget what I was doing for her. And I swallowed all that garbage and pulled out my credit card again. The wedding was beautiful. I'm not going to lie. Rachel looked happy. The place was amazing. The food was good. Everyone had a good time. Several relatives told me I was an incredible brother. How generous I was, that Rachel was so lucky to have me. But nobody, absolutely nobody, offered to pay me back even a cent of everything I'd spent. Rachel didn't even thank me formally. Like she gave me a hug on the wedding day and said, "Thanks, bro," and that was it. $50,000 and all I got was a 2-second hug. I thought after the wedding things would calm down, that Rachel and Nathan would start their life together, and I could focus on recovering my money and my savings. But, oh surprise, things only got worse. Like 2 months after the wedding, Rachel started calling me asking for money for rent. That they didn't have enough. That Nathan had lost his job again. That she only needed $800 for this month and she'd pay me back the next. Spoiler, she never paid me back anything. And that's how a cycle started that lasted like a year and a half. Rachel would call me every 2 or 3 weeks, asking me for money for different things: rent, utilities, groceries, Nathan's car payment, their cat's vet bill, whatever. And I, like an idiot, kept giving her money because she's my sister, and because my mom would call me saying Rachel called her, crying, that they were having a really hard time, that they just needed a little help to get ahead. A little help that never turned into them getting ahead. Just more requests for money. The straw that broke the camel's back was like 6 months ago. We were at a family dinner at my parents' house. It was my mom's birthday, I think, and we were all there eating and chatting normally. And out of nowhere, while we were eating dessert, Rachel dropped super casually, "Hey James, Nathan and I are thinking about buying a house, and we were wondering if you could help us with the down payment." She said it like that, as if she was asking me to pass the salt, super casual, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I stayed quiet for a moment because honestly I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. I asked her how much they were thinking the down payment was, and she said like $30,000, but that it didn't have to be all at once, that it could be in payments. $30,000. In payments. As if that made it better. I told her no, that I was sorry, but I couldn't do that I'd already spent a lot on her wedding, and that I needed to recover my savings. And that's when Rachel completely changed. Her face transformed, like her expression went from smiling to angry in 2 seconds, and she says, "Seriously, James, I mean, you're a loser if you can't help your own sister with something so important. You literally have a super well-paid job and you live alone in your apartment, all boring, not doing anything with your money. And you can't help your family when we need you." She called me a loser. In front of the whole family. As if I was the bad person for not wanting to give her $30,000 more after everything I'd already spent on her. I looked at my parents expecting them to say something, to tell Rachel she was being ridiculous and disrespectful, but both of them stayed quiet looking at their plates. My dad even nodded a little, like agreeing with Rachel. And in that moment, something broke inside me, something that had been holding on for years. I got up from the table, grabbed my keys, and told them, "You know what? I'm sick of this. I'm sick of you treating me like an ATM. I spent $50,000 on your wedding, Rachel, and you never really thanked me. I've been giving you money for over a year and a half. And now you call me a loser because I don't want to give you $30,000 more. Well, you know what? It's over. You're not getting another cent from me." Rachel started yelling that I was selfish, that family helps each other, that I was a bitter person who had no life of his own, and that's why I was jealous of them. My mom asked me to calm down and that we should sit down and talk like adults. But I was already at the door. I told them I wasn't going to talk about anything, that I was sick of all of them, and I left. I drove to my apartment with my hands shaking from anger, like I couldn't even hold the steering wheel properly. And when I got there, I sat on my couch and cried, something I hadn't done in years, because I realized my family really only saw me as money, not as a person. During the following weeks, my mom called me like 100 times, sent messages, but I didn't answer any of them. I didn't want to hear more guilt trips or more excuses. And then something happened that still makes me laugh at how absurd it is. Rachel created a GoFundMe for the down payment on her house. Yes, a GoFundMe, as if it were a medical emergency or something. She titled it something like, "Help a young couple buy their first home," and she put pictures of her and Nathan looking super sad and needy. Christina, a mutual friend, sent me the link and told me, "Hey, you have to see this. You won't believe what Rachel is doing." And sure enough, there was the GoFundMe asking for $30,000, and in the description, Rachel told this super victimized story about how they'd had bad financial luck and that they just needed a little help to start their life together. She didn't mention anything about the $50,000 I spent on her wedding or the money I'd been giving her monthly. The GoFundMe was active for like a month and Rachel only raised $75. $75, which were probably from some aunt or grandma who felt bad for her. I thought that's where all the drama would end. But oh no, Rachel had more surprises in store. Like 2 months after I stopped talking to them, I got a call from Rachel's landlord. Turns out Rachel had stopped paying rent like 3 months ago and had told the landlord that the brother was going to cover the back payments because he always helped her with everything. The landlord was calling me to collect $2,400 in back rent, and when I told him I hadn't agreed to pay anything and that Rachel was lying, he got super angry and told me he had emails where Rachel told him I was going to pay. I told him I was sorry, but that was between him and Rachel, that I had nothing to do with it, and I hung up. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when I received notification that Rachel was suing me. The lawsuit said something about breach of verbal agreement, that I had promised to support her financially and that now I was breaching that agreement. She presented as evidence some super edited text messages where supposedly I promised to help her with the house. But the messages were clearly fake, like the date didn't match anything, and the words didn't sound at all like how I write. I had to hire a lawyer, spend another $2,000 on legal fees, and go to court. It was the most surreal experience of my life. Sitting there in a courtroom while my sister blatantly lied in front of a judge, saying I had promised her financial support for life because she was my younger sister, and I had the duty to take care of her. The judge let her talk for like 5 minutes, and then asked her if she had any real evidence of a written or signed agreement, and Rachel got super nervous and said no, that everything had been verbal but that her mom could confirm that I always helped the family. The judge basically told her she was wasting the court's time, that there's no law that obligates an adult sibling to financially support another adult sibling, and that presenting false evidence was a serious crime. He dismissed the case in like 10 minutes, and also fined Rachel $500 for wasting the judicial system's time. Rachel left there crying and yelling at me that I had ruined her life, that I was a monster, that she would never forgive me. I just went straight to my car without saying anything because honestly I had nothing to say to her. You'd think after that my parents would react, that they'd realize Rachel had crossed the line, but no. Like a week later, my mom called me crying, saying Rachel had used their credit cards without permission and that now they had like $15,000 in debt, and if I could help them pay it because they couldn't handle the minimum payments. I asked her if she was serious, if she was really asking me for money after everything that had happened, and she told me I was her son and that sons are supposed to help their parents when they need it. I told her no, that they chose to let Rachel get away with everything for years, that they chose to stay quiet when she disrespected me in their house, that they chose to never defend me, and that now they had to deal with the consequences of having created an entitled monster who didn't know how to manage her, money, or take responsibility for anything. My mom started crying harder and saying, how could I be so cruel to my own mother? I told her I was sorry, but my answer was no, and I hung up. That was the last conversation I had with any of them. I blocked them all on my phone, on social media, on email, everywhere. I changed my number like a month later because Rachel somehow got my new number and started sending me messages from unknown numbers. In one of those messages, she sent me this super manipulative apology where she said she understood I was angry, that she had made mistakes, but that at the end of the day we were family and family always forgives, and please consider helping them with the debts because they were really having a hard time. I didn't answer her. I haven't answered anything to anyone in my family in 6 months, and honestly, it's been the most peaceful time of my life. No calls asking for money, no guilt trips, no drama, just me living my life and focusing on my things. I managed to rebuild my savings. In fact, I just bought my own house last week, a nice house in a good neighborhood, and I paid for it with my own money without asking anyone for help. Sometimes I feel bad. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I think about my parents and wonder how they are. If they managed to get out of debt, if Rachel finally matured, or if she's still the same. But then I remember how they treated me, how they used me, how they never defended me or valued me as a person, but only as someone who could solve their financial problems. And it passes. Christina tells me sometimes that Rachel still talks bad about me with people we know, saying I'm a horrible brother who abandoned his family. But it doesn't even affect me anymore. Like, let her say whatever she wants. People who really know me know how things are. Do I regret spending those $50,000 on her wedding every single day? But I also know that if all this hadn't happened, I'd probably still be my family's ATM for the rest of my life. So I guess it was an expensive but necessary lesson. I learned you can love your family and still set boundaries, that you don't have to sacrifice your financial and emotional well-being just because you share blood with someone, and that sometimes the best decision is simply to walk away from toxic people, even if they're your parents or your sister. Last week I was unpacking boxes in my new house, and I found a photo from Rachel's wedding, where we're all smiling and looking happy. I looked at it for a while and then threw it in the trash. Not with anger or anything. Simply because that version of me who thought being a good brother meant letting them use me doesn't exist anymore. And I don't need reminders of that time. Now I'm focused on building my own life, surrounding myself with people who truly value me, and never again letting anyone make me feel guilty for saying no. And honestly, that's enough for me.